In this video, I'm going to try and put together a top 10 list of the best Battlefield weapons. I was recently watching a Watch Mojo video the other day that had somehow managed to autoplay after a video from JackFrags, and honestly, it was quite awful. Sometimes their content is good, but this one was absolutely rubbish. I actually watched this video when it first came out over a year ago and left a comment, and you can see that in the background, so why YouTube then re-recommended it to me is a bit of a mystery. They spent about 8 minutes trying to provide a list of the top 10 Battlefield weapons in the franchise, but apparently they had never played a Battlefield game before in their life. The like to dislike ratio reflected this, and the comments were fairly interesting to read as well, so not a wasted experience for me at all. The criteria for picking weapons on this list is therefore as follows. The weapon obviously has to be considered as one of the best in the game where it is housed. For example, the AK-971 is incredible in Battlefield 4, so it would be included. It has great stats and is used by a lot of people, indicating that it's pretty damn good. Secondly, we have to look at how the weapon performs today and not in previous patches, although that might come into account for a few of the weapons, as you'll see. I might mention how the weapon was before the patch, but I'll be taking gameplay recorded within the last few weeks, so it still has to be a really good weapon and not nerfed completely into the ground. Thirdly, I'm going to go back as far as Battlefield 3. Now, I know there were plenty of games before that, and most were very popular at the time. Some still have good player numbers, but I'm not knowledgeable enough about those games and the weapons that were included to make very good decisions, and honestly, I'd be doing a disservice to the fans of those games. I think it would be unfair for me to start saying things that weren't really true and that I didn't really understand myself. So we'll be starting with BF3, then including the Battlefields on from there. Feel free to leave your lists down below, and if you don't agree with me, which many of you won't do leave a comment just explaining why, and then maybe we can come up with a better list in the future. Probably the most used weapon, and arguably the first weapon on everyone's list, would be the Battlefield 3 M16 A3. Used in the assault class, the M16 A3 is considered as the go-to gun for new players and is a great, easy to use all-rounder. There are better weapons according to the stats, and not everyone sticks with the M16 A3 for that long, but in my opinion, when all things are considered, it has to be one of the best weapons in the game and has been for years and years. The fact that that Watch Mojo video failed to include it really does say a lot about that channel in general when it comes to videos like this, and I think that virtually everyone watching this video would include it in their list. At number 2, another obvious inclusion, and one that you definitely all saw coming, is the Battlefield 4 AK-971. The weapon was also very good in Battlefield 3, but for me it really does shine above the rest in Battlefield 4. Firing at 900 rounds per minute, the AEK is probably the most used weapon in BF4, with that stat alone proving how good the thing is. Jumping around corners and spraying into enemy players, or burst firing at longer ranges, the AEK can do it all. A favourite of the 5,000 hour playtime locker only tryhard, the AEK has to be on the list. Directly following the AEK we have another BF4 weapon. It's a sidearm, and this time it's the G18. In truth, the G18 essentially acts as a pocket assault rifle, offering the user a get out of jail free card when they run out of ammo with the primary weapon. Again, it can be hip fired very successfully. It's not exactly the most skillful weapon in the world, but damn, it is effective, and a lot of people will use it. I personally much prefer the Magnum as a secondary due to the satisfaction you get when connecting a headshot, but the G18 is more reliable and easy to use in my opinion, and it definitely has to make the list. At number 4, it's time to move on from Battlefield 4 and move on to Battlefield 5. The Type 2A is the next weapon. I hated this weapon when it was introduced to the game. From the early playtests that I was involved in before we got the Wake Island remake, I knew this gun would be busted. Just looking at the stats really did scare me. Over 1000 RPM and a 50 round magazine is a recipe for disaster, and it turned out to be that way. Players that aim will just completely dominate, and players that can't aim will also get massive luck with hipfire spray and prays through doorways, windows and any other choke points on the map. It's an incredible piece of kit, and even after several balance changes, the Type 2A is crazy good. I was tempted to include the 50 round magazine Suomi or maybe even the Tommy gun, but the Type 2A is just better in my opinion for most players. This thing just dominates. I really wanted to include a Battlefield 1 medic weapon, but was struggling to choose the best in the class. As with many weapons in the game, they all have specific jobs and do certain things better than others. The RSC is fantastic at counter sniping in my opinion due to that 2-shot potential, but is fairly difficult to use in close quarters, and consequently it's not that popular. The autoloading 8.25 is a favourite of mine, but not really the best at doing everything, and the autoloading 8.35 is the ultimate skill cannon, but again quite tricky to use. The only weapon I can think of that is a great all-rounder, competitive in most circumstances and used by pretty much everybody in the game. The use stats of this weapon are very high. It has to be the M16 A3. My personal choice of the three has to be the trench variant. At number 6 we have the Battlefield 3 AN-94. What a weapon this thing is. When the game first came out, people didn't really understand how to use the AN-94 and didn't really understand how good it could be. Using the burst mode though and getting that high rate of fire was the trick, up to 1200 RPM if you got it right, and something completely unique when comparing to other assault rifles. It did share the reload animation from the AEK. It wasn't exactly the most special weapon to look at in my opinion, but the AN-94 is very good. Still to this day, a lot of good players use it. I think it's probably the best assault rifle in the game. It ties with the M16 A3 in my opinion. To team up with that AN-94 you'll probably want a sidearm. Battlefield 4 has the G18 whilst Battlefield 3 has the Rex. This thing is incredible and is my favourite sidearm in the Battlefield franchise. In close quarters you could spam the weapon and get a 2-shot kill or maybe hit a headshot. The ease of use and pure stopping power at close range makes it a fantastic weapon to switch to in those times where you need a reload on your primary but you just don't have the time. At number 8 we have another Battlefield 1 weapon, the SMG A3. I was originally contemplating putting in the Hellriegel just because of the outrage that weapon caused when Battlefield 1 first came out, but DICE did then change the game slightly, buffing the SMG A3 from an original slow firing meme weapon into a hip firing laser cannon that we see today. An incredibly annoying weapon to play against and a highly rewarding weapon to use in terms of kills, the SMG A3 has to be included on this list. The second and final Battlefield 5 weapon that I will include on this list is the 12G shotgun. Now, I was a little bit confused really when it came to Battlefield 5 and picking the best weapons, because that game, especially before the major TTK changes, was quite well balanced with weapons. Everything really had its own niche and you could use pretty much anything you wanted if you adapted your playstyle to it. However, the 12G was one of those weapons that really stood out above the rest. It's a weapon that has been nerfed a few times but consistently tops the weapon use charts and causes massive problems on maps such as Operation Underground, any map that's playing on grind or TDM, and pretty much any close quarter engagement, especially within a building. It's a complete beast. Finally, the last weapon on this list, we're going to look at Battlefield 4 and once again dip into the recon class. I did say I'd include more recon weapons in this list, but it's kind of difficult. With recon weapons, it depends on what you're doing. Are you long range sniping? Are you close quarter sniping? It's kind of difficult to pick in a top 10 list, but for Battlefield 4 I think I have one. I'm not a massive scout or recon player, so instead, as you can tell from the gameplay in the background for this weapon, I went and spoke to one of the best snipers in the franchise, Big E. This guy is incredible. He's been on the top plays a bunch of times, and he said that a lot of snipers have their own place, but if he was forced to choose one, he would go for the JNG90. The highest bullet velocity and an 11 round magazine means this thing is fairly versatile, and in second place he went for the SRR61. What do you think? I'd have to agree with him because he's far more knowledgeable than me, but maybe there's another weapon in the recon class that you prefer. So that's it, that's my top 10 list of best weapons in Battlefield. I think it's a better list than Watch Mojo came up with, but maybe there's another one that you wanted to add in. Maybe you could leave a comment down below with your weapon. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.